In the United States, we are governed by law and order. But what happens when the criminal justice system gets it wrong?
Definitely a nightmare. It was also surreal at the same time. I couldn't believe it was happening.
Wrongful convictions are real.
It did happen to me. I'm living proof.
And it has happened to thousands of others across the country of all races, genders, and backgrounds.
Wrongful convictions don't just affect the person that's in prison. It affects the entire family.
The first date, first baseball game, my daughter walking down the aisle. You know, you can't get that back.
And that's a heavy price to pay in any situation, especially if you're actually innocent.
Never thought that innocent people were arrested for something that they didn't do. I mean, much less to be convicted.
The amount of wrongful convictions or wrongful accusations are small, but it's a large number. Small percentage, large number.
A growing number when even one is one too many. Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates, we sit down with 3 men who had their lives turned upside down by false accusers, overzealous prosecutors, and dirty cops. You'll hear their unbelievable horror stories, how they kept hope alive, and their advice for fellow victims and families of criminal injustice.
Michelle Malkin Investigates. Now, here's Michelle Malkin.
It is better that 10 guilty escape than that one innocent suffer. This is a bedrock principle of common law popularized by British jurist William Blackstone, French philosopher Voltaire, and American founding fathers Benjamin Franklin and John Adams. We err on the side of protecting innocence and the rights of the accused because America values individual liberty over the state. Yet, the presumption of innocence has been turned on its head. For alarming numbers of citizens, it's presumed guilty until proven innocent. And the road to exoneration is long, rocky, and hellish. Here is a stunning statistic. There have been more than 2,000 exonerations in the United States since 1989. And the numbers keep rising, as you can see. 2016 set a record of 168 and counting. More than 70 of these wrongful convictions were the result of official misconduct, according to the National Registry of Exonerees maintained by the University of Michigan Law School. Hollywood and social media have caught on to the phenomenon. Wrongful convictions have become the subject of popular podcasts, crime shows, water cooler conversations, best-selling books, and movie scripts. But behind the statistics are real people whose real lives were ruined by appalling miscarriages of justice. They are not just numbers. They have names. Most will never become celebrities, like famous exoneree Amanda Knox, wrongfully convicted of murdering her foreign exchange student roommate in Italy. But their stories deserve to be told. On this episode of Michelle Malkin Investigates, we're shining light on the plight of Ray Spencer, Jeffrey Deskovic, and Brian Franklin. Let's begin with Ray Spencer, former military and law enforcement officer arrested, charged, and sentenced for sexually abusing his children. He spent 20 years in prison.
You know, I would have rather been charged with a murder than something like this. When the governor ordered my release, you know, he said, Mr. Spencer has spent more time in the history of the state of Washington for this type of crime. And he said, I'm extremely disturbed by this investigation with the fact that evidence was tampered with and that the detective was sleeping with Mr. Spencer's wife. A sequence of errors.
How about Jeffrey Deskovic? He was found guilty of raping and murdering a classmate in 1989 and was sentenced 15 years to life.
Virtually all of the coverage was from a guilt-oriented presumptive perspective. And that was definitely prejudicial, and it set the environment under which the case was tried. And it made the overall environment more terrifying to me.
And then there's Brian Franklin, a former law enforcer in Texas, accused by a 13-year-old girl he barely knew of raping her. A heinous crime, if true, that would certainly turn many people against him, and did. These accusations cost him his job, relationships with children, and freedom. But what happens now that a jury decided that he didn't do it?
Hut 1, Hut 2, Hut 3.
In the state where football is king,
Oh, I can't believe you got that one.
it's not unusual to see Texans tossing the ball on a beautiful day.
Coming right back to you.
Okay.
And the Franklins are no exception.
We love to toss the ball. We did a lot of sports together growing up.
This family tradition was put on hold for the last quarter century until now.
And actually, we haven't tossed the ball since he's been out in May.
Paul Franklin is talking about his big brother Brian, who was recently released from serving a life sentence.
21 years is a long time.
Sure is, especially for a crime you didn't commit. Was there ever a point along this terrible journey that you ever doubted your son?
No.
And Brian, was there ever a point along this journey that you felt like giving up?
No.
After decades of fighting and praying, Brian Franklin is finally a free man. And for the first time, he, his mother Irene, and siblings are granting us full access in his first national sit-down interview and telling us stories that have never been shared before.
That was after the verdict was read, and I had an ankle monitor on, and my attorneys cut the monitor off.
Oh, is this Dick DeGuerin here?
Yeah, it's Dick DeGuerin.
And this is?
Neil Davis.
And so they got the honor of cutting that off for you.
The judge brought out the scissors to cut it off, and there he is standing.
And there he
in
is,
the
he's smiling.
Yeah,
This
he's
is
smiling.
the judge.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before he was shackled, caged, and imprisoned, life was good for the Franklin family. Brian grew up near Buffalo, New York, with his parents and 3 siblings.
It wasn't quite a beaver cleaver raising, but it was close to it.
He got his bachelor's in criminal justice and eventually moved to Fort Worth, Texas to become a police officer. As a mom, were you worried at all about his safety?
Well, I didn't want him to go into, it's just Houston. I thought that the crime is too bad. And then Dallas, I didn't want him to go, but I thought Fort Worth, that might be all right.
Over the next decade, he got married, had 2 kids, and eventually divorced, which meant he had visitation with his children on certain days. One of those was March 6th, 1994.
There was a little kid's birthday party. Stayed at the birthday party for a few hours.
Nothing happened, obviously, and uneventful.
Yeah, everybody had to leave at 5:30 because we had to return. I had to return my kids by 6, and Matt had to return his kids by 6.
When did your life change?
Well, probably the day I was arrested,
Which was?
April 21st.
Did you know what the charges were at that point?
That they told me on the way, and I just was in shock. I just couldn't believe it. This totally caught me off guard. I had nothing to do with nothing, and here I am going to jail.
Remember that birthday party? His friend's 13-year-old daughter accused Brian of raping her in the backyard around 6 p.m. But here's where things don't add up. There were a dozen people there, including Brian's kids. He left at 5:30. Her description of him didn't match, and Brian passed a polygraph. Then she changed the timeline of her story, moving the alleged rape from March 6th at the birthday party to the following week. The problem is, Brian says he wasn't at her father's house on March 12th or 13th. He was shopping until late afternoon and has the receipts to prove it. He dropped off his kids, went home, ate, worked out, and went hot tubbing 45 minutes away from where the alleged incident happened. Brian told us he would have informed police of all the facts, but was arrested without an interrogation and without anyone asking a single question. That meant no opportunity to tell his side of the story.
She said that I raped her in the backyard of her father's house. And he called it aggravated sexual assault of a child.
You were charged with this heinous crime.
Right.
Did you commit the crime?
I didn't do it. I wouldn't do it, and I wasn't even there.
What was going through your mind, Irene, when you first learned this?
Well, we were all scared because this had never happened to anyone in our family. It was just so outrageous.
Scared, but not especially worried because they felt he had a strong case.
I thought for sure he would be found not guilty.
And Mom couldn't talk. And so Dad told me, and we had to fly up there to testify at the sentencing. And I remember looking at the jurors when I was on the witness stand, and they looked so hateful.
There were no witnesses, no DNA tests. All the prosecution had was the word of a 13-year-old girl and testimony from a doctor. She said that she had not engaged in any sexual activity, but there was injury to her sexual organs.
Correct. Yeah, she said she had never had sex before. And so, you know, the DA and the jury is saying, oh, it must be from him.
The jury found him guilty and sentenced him to life. What they didn't know then was the girl later claimed under oath her stepfather repeatedly sexually assaulted her, which would have caused those injuries. But remember, the girl told authorities she was a virgin before accusing Franklin of rape. It was this lie that eventually paved the way for a retrial. How could you get up every morning and look at yourself in the mirror, knowing that's on your hands, that's on your conscience and your soul?
And she's had ample opportunities to tell the truth. We've had private investigators talk to her, and she makes the same lie, and it doesn't make any sense. When the evidence proves this, and you say this, and you know you're lying, what's wrong with you? You know, I'm sorry whatever happened to her in the past, but I had nothing to do with that.
What was the outcome with the stepfather? So did he go to jail?
No.
No.
He ended up plea bargaining for a lesser charge of injury to a child, and he got 10 years probation.
Probation. Another miscarriage of justice there. Even with this new evidence, it took 4 appeals over 18 years for Brian to get a new trial.
I didn't tell, the other inmates why I was there, And like I was telling my family, last night, I can't do this.
The suffering imposed by false accusations and wrongful convictions doesn't just disappear when an innocent man finally goes free. It's an injustice that remains raw and may never fully heal.
I felt guilty many times that I was having fun or I was enjoying it, or at family gatherings, tears were shed every single time because Brian wasn't with us, and it was unfair.
In 2016, Brian was finally granted a new trial. Long-buried truths emerged, and the prosecution had no effective rebuttals. One key witness, the accuser's stepbrother, contacted the family through a website Brian's other brother Darren had created.
Her stepbrother testified at my retrial, and he said that she did not like going to visits with Matt, her father, and that she wanted to get out of going up there. And once she falsely accused me, and since I was friends with Matt, that would solve the problem.
In less than 2 hours, the jury found him not guilty.
One of the jurors was waiting in the parking lot for us, and he said he was happy to right a wrong, and that he could be part of something, to see that justice was done. The word is out that I'm innocent.
The truth did come out.
Yes, it did.
Took 21 years.
Yeah.
We were all crying, so happy.
Everybody in the dorms coming over, congratulating me and stuff like that. And the next day I left. And the song I was listening to on my radio at the time was I'm Going Home. So that was just sort of ironic.
Sorry. I need a tissue. So when you walked out permanently, your family was there to meet you?
Yeah, went to the jails, been like 3 weeks there, then we had the bond hearing. And then went to my family, and some of the media was at the courthouse steps, and I always wanted to give a courthouse step interview, and I was able to do that.
I think there's a picture of you with your
Yeah.
The arms up in the air.
Yeah. Freedom! That's what I shouted when I came out.
So tell me, Brian Franklin, how does it feel? I'm going to Disney World!
It's that sense of humor that Brian and his family credit to pulling him through the dark decades and his faith in God.
Justice, freedom, victory in Jesus.
Amen.
Brother Paul says 1,500 people in several churches prayed for Brian over 21 years. Now the family is making up for lost time.
There goes an innocent man. All right. Okay, Jeff.
Brian, can you start opening up? I need
How easily they slip back into old
How many?
routines.
corn, tomatoes.
The Franklins celebrated his one-year release by spending a meal together, the same way they did when he first got out.
And you dump out the whole.
Just having a meal with him is wonderful.
I think you can never take the simple things for granted
Oh my gosh.
after that much deprivation.
When we left the courthouse and we were walking to the restaurant, Brian was just looking around. And I told him, nobody knows where you came from. I think he felt like he stood out, but he didn't. He was in a suit. He looked handsome. And so he was just looking around, and it was sunny, and, just the normal things that we take for granted, like walking down a street, was significant.
We might take these things for granted, but he doesn't.
Lunchtime.
Thank you, Mom. Looks
Yes.
great.
Before my conviction, I believed in God, but I didn't always act that way. And once I got locked up, one of the first things they do is they give you a paper Bible. And I started reading it. I had never really read the entire Bible. And I'm sitting there, what am I doing here? What is going on? I'm innocent. And so I started reading the Bible, and it opened my eyes and it encouraged my faith, and I guess the faith of the whole family.
Now they take advantage of every moment together to make up for those lost years.
I was innocent the day I got arrested, and I'm innocent the day I got acquitted, and I'm innocent today. I haven't changed. What the court has said about me has changed, but I haven't changed. I've always been innocent of this.
Brian Franklin spent 21 years behind bars. That's almost incomprehensible to us, so we wanted to show you what that looks like. Let's imagine that each of these 38-pound cinder blocks represents 1 year of his life, or 365 days. Now we have 21 of them, and as you can see, that's enough to fill up this entire area. The justice, or injustice system, stole 7,700 days of his life, and it's not over. Brian is legally vindicated, but not practically exonerated. Even though he was acquitted in 2016, he hasn't gotten an official certificate of innocence. And without it, he cannot seek compensation from the state. So he's living with his mother outside of San Antonio, working at a grocery store, and crowdsourcing through GoFundMe to help with day-to-day costs and attorney fees. So while his criminal case is technically over, Brian's fight for justice continues.
Fake news is everywhere. Shut it down for good. Ditch the liberal media talking points and find out what the mainstream media isn't telling you about President Trump and the White House. CRTV's White House correspondent John Miller braves the Washington hit squad to give you fair and fact-based coverage of the Trump administration. Exclusive video interviews with Trump's top officials and aides. False liberal narratives exposed. Punchy, honest analysis from inside the White House briefing room.
Guys, this isn't the White House press briefing room. This is a green screen studio.
Only on the White House Brief.
I discovered Brian Franklin through my continuing investigative work on Daniel Holtzclaw's case. He's the former Oklahoma City police officer convicted of sexually assaulting 8 accusers without a single corroborating witness or piece of direct forensic evidence. After sex crime detectives conducted a sloppy, biased investigation, and prosecutors and their crime lab expert grossly mischaracterized their so-called smoking gun DNA evidence, deceiving a jury forced to endure protests, screams, and intimidation inside and outside the courtroom during a circus mob hijacked trial.
I believe, from my study of it, my research of it, that the guy's innocent. And my recommendation to him is to keep fighting. Never give up. The innocent never stop fighting, one way or another. Keep on fighting, and something will break. Something will break. You just don't give up hope.
And that's exactly what Daniel's family is doing, working tirelessly for the day Daniel will be free, unshackled, and exonerated. His sister Jenny refuses to let the critics and social justice mobs silence her. She is determined to prove her brother's innocence. She has pushed the facts of his case online, in the media, and now to the people who understand it firsthand, men and women who have been wrongfully accused and are now exonerated. On the southwestern coast of the United States, surfers catch waves, bikers cruise along the coast, and beachgoers soak up the sun. There's also hope for Jenny Holtzclaw that comes from strangers who've been in her family's shoes. Meet Ray Spencer.
Hi, how are you?
Well, how about you?
Jenny just did.
Have fun?
He's a man from a different generation and a whole different world. Someone she probably wouldn't have ever met if they didn't have one very important thing in common.
It was great to, actually meet the person that I heard that was wrongfully convicted, also a police officer, same as Daniel.
A bond forged on the thin blue line. Ray Spencer was a police officer charged with sexual abuse, just like her brother Daniel. Ray served 2 decades behind bars before he was exonerated.
You were the officer that put criminals behind bars, but going in as a person wrongfully convicted, how did that make you feel?
You know, everybody in prison says they're innocent. So if you really are innocent, nobody cares.
Jenny's brother Daniel followed in their parents' footsteps and went into law enforcement. His job was to serve and protect the people of Oklahoma City. He earned a reputation as a tough, hard-working cop and served a stint in the prestigious gang unit. But all that came to a screeching halt on June 18, 2014, when he pulled over 57-year-old Janie Liggins at this intersection. A 15-minute traffic stop that changed his life. Daniel says he pulled her over for swerving and let her off with a warning. She claims he sexually assaulted her. An accusation his fellow officers believed even before getting his side of the story. Before you started the interview, did you have a sense that he did the things that Janie Liggins accused him of doing?
Before we started the interview, I felt like that what Janie told me was the truth, yes.
The witch hunt began. OCPD created a profile of Black women with criminal histories whom Daniel had encountered on patrol. They started with Terry Morris, homeless with a record of drug use, diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic who couldn't pick Daniel from a lineup. She misidentified his patrol car and described her assailant as having skin with a dark color, or was Indian or Irish or white. And she clearly wanted no part of this case.
I can't have this guy running around Oklahoma City.
But somebody else can do it. I don't want to. I just want to leave it alone.
Then there was Carla Raines, denying 7 times that she was a victim.
No, how did you get my name anyway on something like this?
And Shardarian Hill, who said this when the police interview was over.
So this is good evidence?
Well, you tell me.
I think so, because y'all, even if he didn't even rape nobody or nothing, he's still been in contact with people that he arrested.
When I watched her interviewing the 2 detectives, I thought they've cloned mine. And then the one interview of an alleged victim, where the detective forgets to shut the recording off, and she comes off with something, well, even if he didn't rape me, it was a good interview, right?
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking at that point in time, that whole thing should have been shot down.
Should have.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible...
But the case snowballed. In 2014, Daniel was charged with 36 crimes alleging sexual assault of 13 women. He was convicted the following year on 18, exactly half.
A cop in prison is somewhere near the bottom, and a cop in prison that's in on a sexual beef, You can't get any lower than that. But my first day in prison, the prison guard had a hold of my arm when he took me off the bus, and he could feel it shaking. He said, "You'll be all right." I said, "I was a cop." He said, "You won't live 6 months." And I ran into him again 17 years later, and he did a double take, and he said, "How'd you do it?" I said, "I have no idea."
What got you through those days?
That I had to accept the fact that with 212 years, I would never know freedom again.
Ray Spencer speaks hard truths about life behind bars. Cop killers are celebrated. Convicted cops, they're treated as the lowest of the low, in the same class as snitches and gang turncoats. Surviving in the regular yard is hard enough. But protective custody, as Daniel Holtzclaw has told me, is its own unique hell of both physical and psychological isolation. Inmates in protective custody are segregated. Their access to things like prison jobs or classes is severely curtailed. But Daniel can communicate with the outside world, and his team of supporters is using the internet and social media to push the facts of Daniel's case, especially those that never got reported, and to connect with people like Ray Spencer and Erica Fuchs.
In January of 2016, I was just surfing the internet, and I found an article about Daniel Holtzclaw.
Independent DNA researcher Erica Fuchs did not know the Holtzclaws, but
after reading a couple articles about him, I was confused about what the DNA evidence actually was. I felt like I was someone who had come upon the scene of an accident, a horrible accident, and so I wanted to learn more and see what I could do. I just went ahead and reached out and asked if they were able to get the DNA documents for me to look at.
She made damning DNA discoveries that discredit the prosecution's so-called smoking gun against Daniel. After months of research, Fuchs found it wasn't just the accuser's DNA on his uniform pants, but also DNA from at least one unknown male.
The Oklahoma City Police Department's forensic analyst had testified there was no evidence of male DNA in those two interior samples. The troubling part for me, too, was that the data page that showed there was male DNA was actually initialed by the Oklahoma City Police Department forensic analyst, very close to where it said male DNA, and also this is information that you should follow up on, I think was approximately the wording.
This discovery supports the theory of innocent touch DNA.
It could have been a dry cleaner who handled the pants, someone who had DNA on a doorknob Daniel handled, or it turned out when Daniel stopped the teenager, she was with a man and a woman, and Daniel had to question all of them,
touching them and their belongings. Erica is exploring more on these theories and forensic science methods at the Innocence Network conference.
So often we're told the narrative that these cases are innocent mistakes. And one after one, we heard stories of official misconduct.
So being at the conference lets us communicate with other people who are very familiar with how wrongful convictions happen. I wanted to come to learn specifically about post-conviction testing.
Erica, Jenny, and Ray are just 3 of the hundreds who attended.
Darrell was ultimately exonerated.
Exonerees taking the spotlight on the first night to share their stories. And Jenny taking advantage of the network around her to share Daniel's.
I wanted to come to hear other people's stories. I wanted to hear their fight. I wanted to hear their families' fights, network a little bit more and see the different ways that I can keep on fighting for Daniel.
In the room full of 200 or so exonerees, she met another one with some important advice.
Maybe the most important thing is to never give up. If I had given up, and I would never have made it out.
Jeffrey Deskovic was serving 15 to life for murdering and raping a classmate.
It was very surreal. I never thought that innocent people were arrested for something that they didn't do. Much less to be convicted.
So you advocate for wrongfully convicted people now. That's your passion now.
Yes, it is.
And now you're going to law school.
I couldn't forget about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind. I knew that wrongful convictions were unfortunately not a rare thing. I want to be able to represent some of the people. So that's why I'm in law school. I want to free more wrongfully convicted people.
He tells Jenny his strategy as a lawyer would begin in the court of public opinion.
In media, at first when people are wrongfully convicted, they're not your friends.
Absolutely not. No, they are not. And I feel like the defense attorneys aggravate the situation because they don't respond back in the media to what the other side is saying, and they often prevent their clients from doing so. Look, if one side can do it, why can't the other? Think about how that one-sidedness really can play such an important role. It can affect the jury pool.
I've seen that firsthand with Daniel's case, how Daniel was convicted in the court of public opinion rather than inside of trial. So I do believe that you're right. You do have to speak to the media.
Daniel and his family wanted to tell his story inside and outside the courtroom, but his trial attorney insisted they remain silent and kept Daniel off the stand. As we told you, ineffective counsel is one of the key propositions of Daniel's direct appeal. And the only things the public had ever heard from him before or during the trial were brief excerpts from his single 2-hour police interrogation video. What most of America never saw was that Daniel was completely open and cooperative during that interrogation, conducted within hours of accuser Janie Ligon's allegations of sexual assault. He refused a lawyer, volunteered to take a polygraph, signed waivers to hand over DNA samples in his uniform, and to search his patrol car, phone, computer, and apartment.
Stay up. There we go. And you get a free teeth cleaning with your first time.
You won't go none, though.
Forensic evidence corroborated everything he told detectives. Daniel had nothing to hide.
I mean, we can go through a couple different things of why we've got you in here, but you sure there's nothing you want to?
Nothing.
So if we go off the video and watch that,
right,
you're still going to stick with your story?
Yes, sir.
If we go off DNA?
DNA as well.
Should we show you the video?
Yes.
You do want to see it?
Yes.
So there's nothing that...
Everything that I recall of that night is what was asked and everything. That's what happened.
Michelle was the first journalist to actually come out, want to listen, want to hear more information. First person who took the chance to say, what if he didn't do it? And that was all it took. And luckily she did. And I can't thank her enough for wanting to do that, because she took that chance and she exposed so much to the public. So for the first time, finally, other media outlets are wanting to hear our side of the story.
Remember Ray Spencer? He gives credit to 2 investigative reporters for doing a 3-day expose on his case and the corruption behind it.
You can't paint all the media as being bad. You know, it's like any profession. In Daniel's case, I'm sure that they made him out to be some type of a predatory animal. It looks to me like the 2 detectives just went out and started rounding up women and building their case that way without any merit, and they're just building this hype up. Then people have a tendency to buy into it.
And that's what's been so hard about this whole journey, is having other people report actual facts.
Jenny remains on the front lines fighting for her little brother to turn public opinion from villain to victim.
He needs to know that there are people out there that have survived.
Yeah.
That's what'll keep him going.
Your story gives me a lot of hope, because as a police officer being wrongfully convicted, being sentenced for over 200-something years for a crime you never committed, it gives me hope sitting here across from you. And I told Daniel about our interview, and I said, Daniel, this interview is giving me so much hope, because I know that one day you'll be free. And I don't know when that day will come and the truth will come out, but I believe that one day it will.
I can't do a lot, but I can be there for you and Daniel, because this is difficult. But Daniel is going to get out. But the day he walks out, I'd like to be there and shake his hand, welcome him home.
Can't wait for that day.
The latest twists and turns in Daniel's case make John Grisham's novels look tame. A new bombshell dropped in May. The Attorney General filed a sealed motion containing secret evidence. The AG claimed the information was privileged and protected by state disclosure laws. One longtime criminal defense lawyer in Oklahoma City stated publicly that the secret hearings were unprecedented. Meanwhile, on May 25th, 6 leading DNA experts and forensic scientists filed a motion to educate the court on the DNA junk science in Daniel's case. 5 days later, the Court of Criminal Appeals issued an interim protective order filed under seal, sending it back to trial judge Timothy Henderson. That means Daniel's lawyers and Daniel himself were prevented from knowing anything about the nature or substance of this sealed information, motion, and order authored by the state on June 2nd. Without waiting for a reply from the state attorney general's office, as it had previously done with a separate amicus brief, the Court of Criminal Appeals quickly rejected the scientists' motion for leave to file their DNA-related amicus brief. On June 26 and 27, trial judge Henderson held 2 days of secret hearings. Daniel's lawyer was not invited to attend and was not notified until after the hearings were over. Local Fox reporter Phil Cross of KOKH obtained surveillance video outside the locked and guarded courtroom. In attendance were Henderson, a court reporter, a team of prosecutors from the DA's office led by Galen Giger, who prosecuted Daniel, Oklahoma City Police Deputy Chief Johnny Coleman, and an unidentified senior city attorney who handles civil litigation. Also in attendance, Campbell Ruddock, OCPD's crime lab supervisor and the boss of Elaine Taylor, whose scientific misstatements and failures we've been reporting to you since our Daniel in the Den series debuted last December. Momentum is building, but at the time of the taping of this episode, Daniel and his family were again in a legal holding pattern, awaiting the court's decision on whether he would have access to the protected information that could be the linchpin for a retrial. As all the intrepid exonerees in our program have shown us, the road to justice for innocent men and women who've been railroaded can be a long and grueling one. We'll keep you informed on all the latest breaking developments as Daniel and his family fight for his freedom. In our social media minute, cheering James O'Keefe. Our season 1 finale interview in studio with Project Veritas founder and pioneering investigative journalist James O'Keefe earned rave reviews. One viewer tweeted, "Keep speaking out and uncovering their lies and corruption. Good will always prevail over evil." We earned 3 clapping emojis from another viewer who tweeted, "Thank you, Michelle Malkin and James O'Keefe, for the fabulous work you do." And viewer Edsel Robbins wrote, "Don't give in. Your efforts are amazing and appreciated by many Americans. Keep it real. Thank you." Thank you for watching. And be sure to check out all of James's latest reports at projectveritas.org. Let us know who else you'd like to be interviewed for MMI's one-on-one in-studio features. Write in your nominees and send them to michelle@michellemalkininvestigates.com. In our Crap Weasel Watch, we call out the political cheaters, government thieves, con artists, frauds, and all-around idiots making America worse. Today's Crap Weasel is Jayavel Morrigan, CEO of a staffing agency called Dynasoft. The Bay Area exec was charged in March 2017 with mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, use of false documents, and of course the pièce de résistance, visa fraud. And it's all related to the already scammy, easily exploited H-1B visa racket. I've been exposing the abuses of the H-1B visa program for years. Silicon Valley loves these visas. Never mind the havoc and hell they create for American workers forced to train their cheap H-1B replacements. In this case, prosecutors say Morrigan and his associate Syed Nawaz faked H-1B paperwork to bring more than a dozen foreign workers to the United States. According to the indictment, their goal was to create a pool of fraudulently imported workers to give them a leg up over other employment agencies. Nawaz allegedly forged letters from companies like Cisco and Stanford University to say the workers had jobs there. But prosecutors say there were no jobs. This case marks a first step in prosecuting those who abuse our overly generous immigration programs at the expense of American workers. For more on the sellout of our best and brightest, check out our H-1B Hell episode of Michelle Malkin Investigates on CRTV. Today's Bulldog Award goes to Coptic Christians in the United States who are stepping up to protect their persecuted brothers and sisters in Egypt from attacks by bloodthirsty jihadists. In the wake of the devastating Palm Sunday jihad attacks in Egypt, Coptic Christians in the United States gathered to pray and to take action. In addition to collecting money for humanitarian aid, CRTV's Nate Madden reports there are ongoing collections for increased security to keep Egyptian churchgoers safe while they pray and worship. Security cameras are no longer enough. American Copts are raising funds to purchase enough metal detectors for every main church entrance in Egypt. The Coptic community in America refuses to let their fellow believers be victims of another vicious jihadi attack. One grassroots leader told Conservative Review, "They can blow up the buildings, but the church is in our heart. We're not going to be defeated."
Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates.
The true minorities in Islam right now are the Muslim freethinkers, are the Muslim dissidents, are the Muslim reformers.
Practicing Muslim Shireen Qadosi knows this firsthand. She has been shunned and punished for daring to challenge modern Islam.
I dealt with physical violence and my family's moderate. What else are the women dealing with who aren't able to speak up?
Women becoming too westernized is the leading cause of honor killing in North America, according to a report for the DOJ.
We don't know how many women have been killed in honor killings in the United States recently. Department of Justice says 27. I think the number is almost undoubtedly higher.
Women are being killed by their family members for adopting the Western culture.
Assimilate and enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, like any American, without the fear of punishment and retribution. But it's not that easy.
I am under a death sentence by Islam. I would be honor killed the minute I step in any Muslim majority country.
Next on Michelle Malkin Investigates, we take a look at the disturbing trend of honor killing and expose the left-wing hypocrites who would rather coddle these perpetrators than condemn them.
The United States is going to have to decide this. Does religious freedom allow people to break other laws, or does it not? And that is a decision that we are not going to be able to avoid.
If you've got a story to share, email me at michelle@michellemalkininvestigates.com. We're so glad you were able to join us and hope you'll stick around for our next edition as we continue our crusade for the truth. On behalf of our entire team, I'm Michelle Malkin. Thanks for watching.